At the start of the 1950s, the Swedish military realized that they had to modernize their armored forces. The M42 tanks couldn't really compete with American patterns or Soviet IS-3 tanks, and it took a lot of time to create new designs from scratch. Consequently, the Swedish armed forces decided to obtain British Centurions. Those were tanks with good firepower, decent mobility, a well-designed crew compartment, and almost untapped potential for future upgrades. First, the Swedish got some Centurion Mark IIIs. In Sweden, they were called Strav 81 or Stridsvagn 81, which stands for the first tank with an 8-centimeter gun. This vehicle was just perfect for the harsh conditions of the Scandinavian peninsula. The Mark III wasn't the fastest tank in the world, but it performed really well on snow and in forested terrain. At the same time, it had a powerful enough gun to be able to take on any potential adversary, and it was pretty low maintenance to boot. The Strav 81 was supposed to be a highly versatile combat vehicle. It was able to withstand hits from pretty powerful guns, especially in mid-range engagements. But don't expect it to be able to quickly get to points of interest or to take on heavy opponents one-on-one. Furthermore, it had no heats or rounds with explosive fillers. On the other hand, its subcaliber rounds pierced almost 300 millimeters of armor, which is simply astounding at that vehicle's rank. Some Strav 81 tanks were also fitted to use the Robot 52 ATGMs. This upgunned model could be found in the premium branch of the British tech tree. All that time, the Swedish were working hard on an ingenious manufactured alternative, but there were a lot of bumps in that road. The KRV project failed to impress the decision makers, and the development of the legendary S tanks was still in the early stages. In the end, the Swedish purchased several hundred Centurion Mark X tanks, armed with 105 Royal Ordnance L7 guns, and soon modernized older models in the same fashion as well. The new variation was called the Stridsvagn 101, its most notable features being better armor in the front and, obviously, its gun. The last of those Centurion variations was only finally decommissioned in 2001, when Leopard 2 tanks started rolling in. Just think about it though. The story of this tank family started more than 70 years ago. The British were testing the first prototypes of the A41 tank, later known as the Centurion, as early as in the end of 1944. Thanks to its 17-pounder gun with good elevation angles, the Centurion then quickly became a trendsetter for the way tanks fought at medium range. What's interesting is that key flaws of that early design, namely an ammo rack in a vulnerable spot and the lack of rounds with explosive filler, would continue to be a thing in many of its later models. The first Centurion didn't have the sturdiest of turrets, let's put it this way, but the British were quick to change that. The later models, the Mark II and the Mark III, were fitted with a new cast turret, and the Mark III was given a brand new 20-pounder as well. Starting with the Mark V, subsequent models, including the Mark X that we have in the game, were armed with a 105mm L7 cannon. The Mark X also has additional 50mm of armor on its glacis, making it a more viable pick when fighting modern tanks. As the 50s were coming to a close, the British decided to outfit the Centurion with a unique mantletless turret, the likes of which some of you saw on the FV4202 and Chieftain tanks. The result? The Centurion Action X Premium tank. Its main selling point is obviously its new turret, capable of bouncing even powerful post-war rounds. In real life, the British military weren't really impressed with what they saw. But no one can stop you from doing all sorts of epic shenanigans with it in the game. The Centurion became a very popular design used by many different countries. More often than not, those tanks underwent heavy modernization abroad to get them to the level of modern MBTs. For example, the Israeli Centurion, the Shot Kal Dalet, is equipped with the Blazer ERA, a 750 horsepower Continental engine, and can use modern APF SDS and heat rounds. That's not to say that the British weren't tinkering with it themselves, but, for example, the Centurion Mark V was used to create the Centurion AVRE, an engineering vehicle with a massive dozer and a 165mm gun. Other notable examples of the British being creative with the Centurion chassis are the Conway and the FV4005 tank destroyers, the latter holding the title of a vehicle armed with the biggest gun in the game. It has a gigantic 183mm cannon. Sometimes you don't even need a direct hit with this one, even when fighting against heavy tanks. The Centurion became one of the staples of the British tank industry. It saw action in the Middle East, in Korea, and in Vietnam. The tanks of this family proved to be reliable, low maintenance, and most importantly, effective combat vehicles fit for use in all sorts of different scenarios. What are your favorite Centurions? The original British designs, or Centurion variations used by other countries? Please tell us in the comments below.